Lucifer, the morning star, the first rebel, king of hell. The name doesn't whisper, it roars. It echoes across theology, literature, and psychology, like a crown hitting the marble floor of heaven. He is the adversary of heaven, the tempter in the garden, the dragon cast down in flames. His name conjures fear, fascination, and forbidden fire. More than a character, he is an idea, a force, a myth that has shaped the edges of religion, art, and the human psyche for centuries. He is the most enigmatic of all archetypes. He is not a god, not merely a devil, but something far more unsettling. A being of light who became the symbol of darkness. To some, he is the embodiment of evil. To others, the symbol of freedom. He is the angel who would not kneel, the one who said no to God and paid the eternal price. He rules not by divine right, but by defiance. His throne is not forged in pride, his kingdom is in exile. No figure has haunted the collective imagination with more paradox than Lucifer. In him we see the highest of aspirations and the steepest of downfalls. Artists paint him with splendor, poets speak of his pride, theologians warn of his wrath, occultists invoke his light, psychologists recognize his shadow. Whether feared or admired, rejected or reclaimed, one thing is certain: Lucifer endures. But how did this figure, the Lightbearer, become the face of evil? How did a name once drenched in radiance come to be clothed in flame and horns? What happened in our texts, traditions, and minds to turn light into betrayal? This is the hidden inversion we must unmask, the forbidden story buried beneath layers of translation, interpretation, and myth-making. To uncover it, we must begin not in the realm of angels and demons, but in the world of ancient prophecy. The story starts not in hell, but in Babylon. The name Lucifer appears only once in the Bible, in Isaiah 14:12, and it wasn't about a devil. It was a poetic taunt aimed at a fallen Babylonian king, metaphorically calling him to be the morning star or Venus cast down from the sky. In Hebrew, the phrase is Hallel ben Sakar, or Shining One, Son of Dawn. It was the Latin translation that rendered it Lucifer, and centuries of interpretation turned that fallen king into a fallen angel. Ezekiel 28 adds another layer. It talks about a cry for the king of Tyre, described as a figure in Eden full of beauty and pride. Again, originally about a mortal ruler, but over time, these verses were stitched together, reimagined, and elevated into something cosmic. The story of the angel who defied God and fell. In the Hebrew canon, Lucifer never appears as the name of Satan, and Rabbinic Judaism typically rejects the concept of a fallen angelic rebellion. Evil is often portrayed instead as a consequence of human choice and the reality of the Yetzer Hara, or the evil inclination. Today, we follow the arc of a name, from a fallen king in Isaiah to the ruler of hell, from a poetic insult to the face of eternal rebellion. Along the way, church fathers reimagined him, Milton gave him voice, and generations of artists, occultists, and seekers shaped him into something far larger than doctrine. But this is more than a historical trail. It's a descent into the archetype itself, Lucifer as light and shadow, brilliance and pride, aspiration and fall. As we trace his transformation, we uncover not just a story of angels and exile, but a mirror of our own inner tensions, the hunger to rise, the temptation to claim the light, the danger of forgetting where it came from. So we begin not with horns or fire, but with a question. Did the Bible ever actually say an angel fell from heaven? The fall of Lucifer as we know it was not handed down in its full image. It was built, piece by piece, across centuries. Early Christian thinkers began to connect the dots. Isaiah's fallen morning star, Ezekiel's cry over a proud king, and Revelation's image of a dragon cast out of heaven. None of these texts named Lucifer as Satan. But through allegory and imagination, a new figure began to emerge. Tertullian and Origen were among the first to make the leap. They read Isaiah's taunt not just as political satire, but as the origin story of the devil. By the time of Augustine, that interpretation had hardened into doctrine. Lucifer was no longer a poetic metaphor. He was the first rebel, the one who said, "I will ascend above the stars of God," and was struck down for it. And just like that, the morning star became the adversary. This is where we see the image evolve. Lucifer, once defined as Lightbearer, becomes the rebel archangel, rising in pride and cast into ruin. The story now enters its symbolic arc, shaped not by scripture alone, but by centuries of theological imagination, epic poetry, and archetypal projection. The most enduring myth tells of an angel of light, nearest to God in beauty and wisdom, who dared to rise above his station. Some versions say he envied humanity, others that he sought the throne of God himself. All in all, the result is the same: a cosmic rebellion that ends in the most humiliating exile ever recorded. Heaven purges itself of pride, and Lucifer, once exalted, is cast down into darkness. Thus, the story of Lucifer is no longer about angels and demons. It becomes a blueprint of human overreach. It reveals what happens when illumination becomes identification, when we mistake the light that passes through us for light that originates in us. Lucifer, then, is not evil in essence. He is misaligned brilliance, the shadow of enlightenment. He is the symbol of what happens when divine fire is divorced from divine humility. By mythologizing Lucifer as the one who would not serve, the tradition externalizes a human dilemma. What happens when the self exalts itself as the source of truth? When does autonomy harden into alienation? When does insight lose reverence? Lucifer's myth endures because it plays out not only in scripture or literature, but in boardrooms, laboratories, spiritual circles, and even daily life. He is the archetype of what happens when we rise too far without rooting ourselves first. In this light, the rebellion is not merely a celestial war, it is an interior tension between the higher potential and the seduction of control. It is the cost of self-exaltation. The fall is not just punishment, it is the natural consequence of separation from source. At this level, the Lucifer myth ceases to be about a celestial being and becomes a psychological and spiritual mirror. Stripped of maxim, it reveals something timeless: the movement of the soul through light, pride, and descent. This is not theology, it is alchemy. Lucifer is not simply a name or persona. He is a pattern, a code etched into the psyche of anyone who dares to seek, to ascend, to shine. We will explore this triad: illumination, pride, fall, not as a story once told, but as a drama we all live. First comes illumination. Illumination is the first flame, the awakening of insight, creativity, or meaning. It is the artist's vision, the seeker's first revelation, the child's first understanding of self. This is Lucifer before the fall. Radiant, articulate, beautiful. He is the light bearer, not evil, but dazzling. Illumination births poetry, science, spiritual awakening. It fuels revolutions, saves lives, builds civilizations. It is the engine of all forward motion. In myth, this is Prometheus bringing fire. In psychology, it's the eureka moment that reshapes our worldview. In spirituality, it's the moment we see, for the first time, the soul behind the veil. But illumination tempts. When the light becomes too bright, it blinds. When it is mistaken for identity rather than gift, humility dissolves. Lucifer's light became his undoing because he mistook it as his own origin. He did not receive the light, he claimed it. So too, when we think our insight originates from us rather than flows through us, we begin to disconnect from the source. Light without reverence becomes arrogance. Your light is a gift until it blinds you to your own shadows. Next comes pride. Pride is the second movement, the desire to become more, to rise, to ascend. In moderation, it is ambition, nobility, discipline. It's what builds cathedrals, writes symphonies, and overcomes odds. This is Lucifer's ascent. I will ascend above the stars of God. Pride is not evil. It fuels excellence. It sharpens clarity. It helps the soul stand in its worth. When integrated, it becomes leadership. When infused with humility, it becomes service. When tempered by reverence, it becomes legacy. But pride unrooted in humility begins to separate. It isolates. The self becomes the sun around which all else must orbit. The soul's radiance becomes a closed system. Lucifer's ascent was not evil in intent. It was misaligned. He rose without center, brilliance without anchor, and so, the higher he climbed, the more inevitable the fall. In this, pride becomes its own punishment, not by wrath, but by gravity. Every ascent carries a threshold. Cross it, and you may fall, not down, but into oblivion. And finally we come to the fall, the final warning. The fall is not simply punishment, it is the consequence of imbalance. It is exile from others, from God, from the self. This is Lucifer's plunge from morning star to prince of darkness, not because of divine cruelty, but because light severed from truth can no longer sustain itself. But here lies the paradox. The fall is not the end. It is the turning point. In exile, one sees clearly. In pain, one learns surrender. In ruin, the soul meets its naked truth. The fall is where illusions burn off, where identity breaks and something deeper is revealed, where we stop climbing and start integrating. This is the hero in the underworld, the mystic in the dark night, the light-bringer in shadow, searching not for power, but for redemption. Yet the fall can also harden. It can turn into bitterness, victimhood, and despair. Some remain fallen not because they were cast out, but because they will not release their pride. The fall is not inherently redemptive. It is only an opportunity for return, for transformation, and for integration. The fall isn't just ruin. It's where we meet what we've become in the abyss. So what happens when this triad comes together? Taken together, this triad forms a living cycle. Illumination awakens us to our potential. Pride drives us to rise but tempts us to isolate, and fall breaks the illusion. And, if we let it, it returns us to humility. Lucifer's story at this level becomes profoundly human. It is not about evil. It is about identity without surrender. It becomes power without integration. The warning is clear. Every light contains shadow. Every ascent invites temptation, and every fall carries a choice. The freedom to choose bitterness or rebirth. To live the Luciferian pattern is not to sin, it is to mistake the source of your light. The key is not to reject your brilliance, but to root it in something deeper than the self. Lucifer is not just a character. He is a mirror. He is the entrepreneur who begins in vision but ends in obsession. The artist who creates from soul but begins to worship fame. This myth is not external. It is within us. It is the code embedded in the human hunger to transcend, and the dangers we face when we forget our origin. Lucifer is the pattern inside all of us. Our light invites pride, and pride promises a fall. The question is, what survives when the light goes out? And this brings us to how Lucifer exists in occult traditions today. Beyond literature, certain sections of Western esotericism reframed him as an archetype of rebellion, illumination, or the pursuit of hidden knowledge. In these systems, Lucifer is not viewed as evil, but as a force that challenges conformity, questions authority, and ignites the spark of personal sovereignty. He is seen as the one who brings fire, not to destroy, but to reveal. This interpretation echoes older myths, like Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods to give it to humanity, and suffered for it. The cost of enlightenment in these stories is exile, because fire, whether divine or stolen, always burns. The question is not whether Lucifer is evil, but whether we can hold his light without being consumed by it. Lucifer in this context becomes an initiator, a figure who guides the seeker through shadow toward self-knowledge. But even with scripture reimagined, Lucifer was still more symbol than story. It would take centuries, and one poet in particular, to give him depth, desire, and voice. That poet was John Milton. In Paradise Lost, published in 1667, Milton didn't just echo the church's image of the devil. He redefined it. His Lucifer is not a caricature of evil, but a tragic, articulate anti-hero. Proud, wounded, defiant. He doesn't slither. He stands. He questions. He dares to say the unspeakable. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. Milton's Lucifer became the prototype for a new kind of figure. He's not evil for the sake of evil. He's driven by ambition, wounded pride, and a hunger for autonomy. And in him, generations of readers saw more than a villain. They saw a reflection. Romantic poets took that image and ran with it. Blake, Byron, Shelley. They cast Lucifer as the eternal rebel, the light bringer crushed by tyranny. In their hands, he became a symbol of the visionary who refuses to bow, the artist and the outcast, the thinker who pays for seeing too much. His rhetoric is seductive, even reasonable, echoing the very questions readers may secretly harbor. Why must we obey? Why should hierarchy be eternal? What is the price of dignity? Through Paradise Lost, Milton did not just reinforce Lucifer's myth, he humanized it, honored it, and inadvertently birthed the romantic image of the rebel, one who bears the light of self-will, even if it leads to destruction. This is where theology gave way to archetype. Lucifer stopped being just a doctrine. He became a pattern, a mythic code, echoing through literature, art, and eventually psychology. In contemporary literature, the Lucifer archetype thrives. He appears as the charming anti-hero in TV series like Lucifer, based on the comic book character from Neil Gaiman's The Sandman. There, he is no longer a horned monster, but a sarcastic nightclub owner, introspective, flawed, even redemptive. Literature, film, and graphic novels continue to reinterpret him as a symbol of complexity rather than condemnation. In modern psychology, he appears in discussions of the shadow self, working with the part of us that hides ambition, pride, and pain. In all these forms, Lucifer reflects our desire to understand and own the parts of ourselves that the light of religion or society has tried to exile. What this legacy shows is that Lucifer is more than theology. He is a myth in motion. He is the narrative of brilliance without roots, of ambition removed from humility. He is every artist who dared too much, every thinker who refused to bow, every seeker who lost their way chasing truth. He is also the part of each of us that wants to rise, to create, to shine, yet trembles at the cost. The real danger is not in Lucifer's light, but in forgetting the balance it requires. To shine without burning, to know without crowning oneself as divine. The Lucifer story, then, is not just about a fall from heaven. It's about a fall into ourselves. The final turn in this myth is not destruction, but realization. As explored, the fall leads to clarity. It shows us what brilliance can conceal: ego, isolation, and the fragility of pride. And in that abyss we are stripped of illusion. There, the morning star rises again, but not in arrogance. It rises in understanding. We see that Lucifer is not merely a villain. He is an archetype of the mind unchained, the heart unguarded, and the soul on fire. In the end, Lucifer's legacy is inseparable from ours. The temptation to ascend, to become luminous, to declare, "I will be like the Most High." This is not foreign. It is the ancient hunger of the human spirit. And every time we reach for that light, we must ask, are we rising in wisdom or only in will? Are we burning with purpose or being burned by pride? The Lucifer within asks not for worship or rejection, but recognition. His name, Lightbearer, reminds us that even shadow has origin in radiance. To deny him is to misunderstand the myth, but to become him, untempered, is to repeat his fall. The challenge and the invitation is to carry the light with humility, to bear the flame and not be consumed. And perhaps that is the final truth. Lucifer does not live above or below. He lives in the choices we make with our light. He is ambitious without roots. He is brilliant without care. And perhaps importantly, he is rebellion without cause, but also in the courage to rise, to seek, to know. His is the story we carry, the myth we enact. And in remembering him, not as Satan, but as Archetype, we remember a part of ourselves that must be redeemed, not through denial, but through integration. The fall is not the end. It is the beginning of knowing who we really are.